So the interesting thing about this episode is, as we're saying, "Go kick rocks" to Teresa, we're also welcoming back Tom. So Tom, I guess my biggest question for you is how much sanity have you gained after this voluntary sabbatical that you took, where they cracked open your chest and restructured your heart? How much sanity has returned to you from this voluntary sabbatical?
Well, I love that you're calling it voluntary. Like I was just like, I could go to the coast, but instead I'm going to go have my sternum cracked. How much sanity have I gained? A surprising amount. I think I didn't realize how much sanity was lacking. But
We
now,
did.
but
Yeah,
now
we did.
Yeah. So now I've caught up to what the rest of you knew. I've regained much sanity. I think, I was starting to pick up on this when we knew that I was going to be going away for surgery. Like, I slowed down a bit and I started gaining some perspective. And I talked a lot about this in my little goodbye video that I don't know, many people listening have probably seen. But, I have been picking up this perspective that I think we all kind of know quietly in the background, that the world is so full of noise and it tries to be really loud, which I talked about in my video. And the more we are able to acknowledge and recognize just how much it doesn't need to be, and so much of that noise is empty. I'm learning that there's almost like an inverse relationship with how much I am connected with the world and how much I bring to it. The more I disconnect from the world, the more I'm bringing to the world.
Can we define the world in that sense?
I mean,
specifically the noise.
Yeah, social media, the news, the relationship, the conversations your friends are having about popular culture and the news and whatever. I think I'm finding that it's very easy when you're just taking in all this stuff that the world is saying to feel like you're being you're involved, or you're a responsible citizen, or you're contributing in some way or whatever. But really all that you're doing is just thinking about what everyone else is saying and doing, and spending a lot less time actually figuring out who you are, what matters to you, and then engaging with those things. And so, surgery is crazy. I learned that you can get through anything. It struck me before the surgery that, talking to other people who've had major surgeries like open heart surgery are kind of withholding and talking about it. And I wanted to talk to people about it. And I realized after the fact that the reason people do that is because going into something like that already is hard enough. And if someone had described to me just what it was going to be like, it would have been much harder, because these things are hard. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of appreciate people being reserved in what they told me and just being, listen, you can do anything. And I think that's true. You just, these things just happen, and they're sort of, you're like a rock rolling downhill going through this thing, and eventually you reach the bottom and you're like, okay, I've gotten through this. It just happened. Mm-hmm. But then I just, 2 months of just being with my family and not having responsibilities and having to humble myself in every way. I didn't wash my own hair or use my arms basically for 2 months.
Wow.
Think about all the things you use your arms for, and then realize you can't do that. Honey, would you tie my shoes and pull my pants up for me and, scratch my back and hand me my cup? And it's very humbling. And it makes it really easy to really quickly remember or realize for the first time, what really matters to you, mm-hmm. and let all the other things go. The things that before the surgery I would have stressed out about in the shower, or things that I was working on solutions for. And now I realize those aren't worth my energy. I don't want to look back on my life. When I look back on my life, the things that I spend most of my time stressing out about are not the things I'm going to look back on. I won't care. So why am I putting all my energy into these things that ultimately don't matter to me? And, so I have, I think, a much better perspective on life that I really want to hang on to moving forward. Also, everything hurts. So
Now I feel like an idiot. Yeah. It's humbling to hear that, right? Because it's so easy. You see this, you go through this when hard things happen, right? You lose someone. My dad died last year, and you kind of just have moments like that where you realize what your life could be and what your life is, and the perspective change is significant. But I wonder what happens where we lose that perspective, because I've noticed you come back, and I've noticed a little bit of these changes in your perspective, and you've talked about wanting to foster some of that here, and I'm wondering what the enemies of those things are. What are the the obstacles that get us back into these habits of listening to the wrong voices or listening to the noise and those types of things? Because I sympathize greatly with somebody who's gone through with what you have, and I can't know that, and I hope I don't know that. But people do hard things all the time, and we can do anything. And so I get excited hearing about that, but I wonder, what the mindset is that we should be adopting every day that builds those habits and just kind of lifts other people up. Because I agree, like, what we think about is so crucial to what we end up doing.
mm-hmm.
It's like when these big life events happen that are either tragic or very humbling, make you very vulnerable. It's like you almost have this real life whiplash, right? Where what you thought was real life and how you've been operating in your life is one way, and then you are forced to stop that way. And there's some pain in that adjustment, but then usually you have to actually go and get help for those things, right? Now you're going to the chiropractor consistently because actually there were all of these problems beforehand that you weren't dealing with. So how do you give staying power to this new perspective, or this return to this perspective that is what's actually important in life? How do you give more staying power to that?
I mean, I think what's interesting, all the things that we're talking about are all things that shake something up. It's a break in the routine of your engagement with the world. And, that's part of what I want to do to maintain this for myself is, I'm going to take more like 3-day weekends on vacation. Like we're going to leave the house and go somewhere else. And I'm going to go home and hide my phone. And I'm going to we fall into these, it's been a whole year since I've not done the same thing every day, and sometimes it's a decade since you've not done the same thing every day. And then a life event happens and you step out of your day to day and you're like, oh my gosh, I couldn't see the forest for the trees. But the second you step out of it, and so I think we need to build into our life, whatever it looks like for each of us, a stepping out. And because I think we naturally reflect when we get pulled out of our routines. Routines are beautiful and powerful, but they're also destructive because you can't see them for what they are.
They build a rut.
Yeah.
The same way if you were to take a stick on dirt over and over again, you'd build a rut, and it's sometimes hard to get out of that. But if you could build into your routines exits from that rut or coming into new ruts.
Well, and it's hard to see that you're in one.
Yes.
Because you're so focused on...
the further down you get.
Totally. Because you can't see over the edge of the rut and you're down in the rut.
I picture like a little teeny Tom inside the dirt, like running in a circle, and it gets deeper and deeper.
Yeah,
and
that's
little teeny Tom.
And then my brother comes with a hose and fills it with water and says it's a moat and I'm drowning. Sorry, did I take that too far?
No, there's no taking this too far. I think because then someone has to come and build. I'm picturing us really small, so now someone's bringing like little leaf rafts, and you're
plugging holes in the dike and the whole nine.
But then if the water fills up, you know what happens? You can get out.
Yeah, but the gators.
Now there's
where the gators were
are
just
they real
dormant.
size gators, or are they? Because I thought we were tiny people for a minute. Let's.
They're tiny gators.
They're only crocodiles. They're not as bad.
I could see it as ants. They could be like ants coming out.
Are crocodiles
They
not as
swim?
bad as alligators?
I don't know.
I know they have different size or shaped snouts, but I don't know which one I'd rather be mauled by.
My understanding is gators are bigger and more aggressive, but
I don't know how gators and crocodiles got into this conversation in the first place.
Mark is how they got into
Moat
this conversation.
gators. That's a hashtag.
Have you watched Tiny World on Apple TV?
No.
Ants are crazy. You should watch that. That's my
That sounds like nightmares.
important statement for the day.
Okay.
What
I'll watch
Tom's
it.
takeaway from 2 months of
It
Sabbatical.
is, have you watched Tiny World? It's my
you
grand.
sound like me after
That's my
binging
grand
documentaries.
wisdom.
I had this foam that they stuck in the hole and they and they filled up the hole.
Drainage tubes. Let's talk about them.
Everybody who
Drainage
listens,
tubes and you.
Let's talk about drainage tubes. Let's talk about.
These aren't something you can sing about.
I could.